right, he is finished. I don't know if anyone still has any questions or thoughts about the future of the Bob stream. If not, we can go ahead and get started and learn all about a little place called Aruba. And I have a presentation prepared. I spent about a solid day, I think, working on it. A lot of yesterday, but also before that. I have a script, and I have a series of images, but of course we can play around with that, and if there's questions or thoughts in the middle, don't be, it's okay, it's perfectly okay for you to interrupt and ask, and I'll be happy to answer. In the meantime, you're more than welcome to keep donating. Technically, the Mrs. Bob co-op thing happens at 600 euros, but I have a feeling we're gonna do it anyway. I was gonna do this anyway because I put so much work. Okay. How did I set this up again? I have a script. I have a special scene just for it. Okay. Picture this. It's somewhere between 125 to 85 million years ago. And the Caribbean plate, which is that thing in the middle there, right? The tectonic plates start smashing up against the South American plate. Kind of. I'm not a geologist, you know, so don't ask me, but there's something happened there in that border between the two plates. And out of these and further earth-shaking events, a chain of islands would form off the coast of what is now Venezuela. All right, and first and foremost of these islands, not just because that's where my family is from, but also because it's literally like the first in the line if you're going from left to right, is the island called Aruba. 32 kilometers long, 10 kilometers at its widest point. It is a place which for a little over a decade I called home. Somewhat reluctantly, but that's a whole other story. And which now still is very important to me. A little bit on the name Aruba. You might wonder, where does that come from? You know, a lot of Caribbean islands are named after saints or geological features or whatever. Puerto Rico just means rich port. St. Lucia is just St. Lucia. You know, the Dominican Republic is named after its capital, Santo Domingo. The meaning of the word Aruba is unknown. There are oh shit, chat should be over there. There are theories which range from the Spanish period all to the pre-Spanish period, but it's not known. Nobody knows. Nobody will ever know. It's just one of those mysteries, but it's kind of a pretty name, isn't it? It's good for the marketing. Geologist here. When two tectonic plates love each other very much, they get a little hard. It either forms mountains, or if they do it while it's very wet, there'll be Aruba. There you go. It's in the shape of a fish fillet. Yes. You know, fishing is an important part of the culture there, so it makes sense. It is not in any way volcanically active. There might be like very, very light earthquakes sometimes, but it's not because it's like on the edge of the plate. But the plate there where it meets, I believe, from what I read, Aruba is on the South American plate still technically, and the Caribbean plate starts ahead of it. So it's pretty stable. There's no big volcanoes or whatever. But its geological history is painted all over its surface. Rolling hills dot the landscape, especially in the northern and eastern parts of the island, with its highest peak is a hill called Yamanota, which reaches a height of an incredible 188 meters. Now, for a lot of places that isn't very high. I live in the Netherlands. That's way up there, dude. That's way fucking up there. Along the rugged northern coast, which is constantly battered by the ocean and very consistent trade winds, which are very important in keeping it like a habitable place to live, because that Caribbean sun is no joke. You will find layers of limestone terraces that just step out of the ocean. Look how beautiful they are. And are encrusted with ancient fossils. And, of course, impressive formations of massive quartz diorite boulders present interesting climbing opportunities for local goats and goat-like entities. One of my favorite activities as a kid was just climbing rocks. Just climbing these big-ass boulders. This is Kasibari. It's a public park. The public park? It's a park centered around these boulders. There's a few more of those lying around. Now, that was chapter 1. All right? We got some geology out of the way. I need these lyrics to be gone. We got some geology out of the way. Let's talk about humanity. Aruba, locationally, is, right? There is, you see, the Americas. You see North America with its terrible countries. You see Central America with its okay countries. You see South America with, well, you know, we prefer not to talk about it. And right in the middle, the Caribbean. And Aruba is located a little under 30 kilometers from Venezuela's Paraguaná Peninsula. You see that little kind of almost island sticking out there, and above it, Aruba. On a clear day, you know, clear, no hazy day, if you're standing on a hill, you can see the mainland from the island. I like to imagine the sweet sounds of Sonic R just kind of permeate the Aruban air at all times. Fun fact, Mrs. Bob, who even though we only met when we came to the Netherlands, also lived on Aruba, had Sonic R as a kid. So yes, factually true. So that distance is just under 30 kilometers, and the seas aren't particularly rough. So as you can imagine, humans with hollowed out log canoes could make that journey pretty easily. And they did, with the earliest evidence of human inhabitants on Aruba being from about 4,500 years ago. That's older than the pyramids, or the same age as the pyramids. Anyway, very little is known about these people from what archaeologists call the pre-ceramic age. They were hunter-gatherers, and as the name implies, they did not have ceramics, they did not create pottery. So other than some graves and I think evidence of villages and stuff, very little is known about them. But several millennia later, around the year 1000 CE, that's Common Era. Okay, write that down. They were either replaced or joined by a group of people we call the Kaikitillo, who had made their way from out of the depths of the Amazon. They are related to a lot of the other tribes that would eventually populate a lot of the Caribbean, and bad stuff happened to them eventually, but we don't talk about that. The Kaikitillo on the islands uh, uh, so the three islands here, Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, were of course related to hey Novazone Plus, were related to or they were part of a more complex civilization centered on the northern coast of Venezuela. You can see that in the dark section there, where it says Caicotillos, and below that it says Venezuela. They had trade routes. They had agriculture. They had their own language. They had intricate political structures. And as we'll soon see, they were also accomplished artists and craftsmen. And though there were the Caicotillo on all three islands, we're talking about Aruba, not the other islands, right? But also, they left a lot of stuff behind for us to get to know them, such as pottery, with quite often these face designs that are quite evocative, and also a lot of intricate geometric shapes, which we'll see a few more of them because they also left hundreds and hundreds of cave and rock paintings depicting humanoid figures, animals, geometric shapes that are kind of mysterious and make you wonder, what's that? Like, how many? This is a book that, as far as I know, is a complete collection of all the petrographs and petroglyphs. It's a very thick book. It has a lot of them. Some of them are a little hard to tell what is what anymore, but others really make you think, yo, that's crazy legs. What do these mean? We will never know. For horrible, evil reasons. Because their most lasting legacy... Oh, right. If I leave that scene, I have to go through all the images again. Because that's how I set it up. I can turn that off. Hold on. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, I think that should work. There we go. Rolling hills, terraces, fossils, rocks, earth, pottery, right? Cave paintings, and their most lasting legacy is their graves. Because in the early 1500s, remember that guy Columbus? He had a bunch of friends, a bunch of Spanish friends, and, they came to the Americas, mostly to the Caribbean at first, to explore. Hi, Pintozilla, thank you.
Gratitude. Pintozilla has donated your 20.00 to the Bob stream. Yay, Aruba Tour.
Yay, Aruba Tour. Let me just add you to the list. Yeah, so the European explorers came to the Caribbean in the early 1500s. And they were interested in a little more than exploring. Now, I generally, when I'm like talking about the history of Aruba, this is one of the most kind of well-documented parts of the island's history, right? Because the Spanish left a lot of records. The Caicotillo didn't. History of the Americas and the Caribbean is always very Eurocentric. But I kind of hate what these people did because it's bad. You know it's bad. I'll get into the details of why it's bad for Aruba in particular in a second. The official discovery date for Aruba is generally claimed to be 1499. I remember in 1999 they celebrated 500 years of Aruba. But technically speaking, the first ships that arrived near the islands only spotted Bonaire and Curacao, or Bonaire or Curacao, it's not entirely clear, but its historians don't think that they spotted Aruba at any point. One of the sailors on the ship was the namesake for these continents, Amerigo Vespucci, a like pathological liar, because he claimed that on these islands lived giants, which archaeologically makes no sense because the people there are like of shorter stature than like modern humans. But it's just, you know, one of those kind of big embellishments he did to get more money and shit and commit more horrors. But in any case, by the early 1500s, by like 1510-ish, all three islands had been charted. All three islands had been landed on. And the Spanish found only one resource. And welcome back, Lupi. The Spanish found only one resource and took it immediately. And that resource was the people. The several thousand Kaikatio that had lived on the islands for centuries were rounded up, all of them, as much as they could get, enslaved, and shipped off to Hispaniola, the island that is now home to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Basically all of them died mining for gold or from disease while being forced to mine for gold, and an entire culture was just raised from the earth. So that sucks. That's pretty bad, huh? Probably a low point. Probably a low point. Maybe not appropriate music right now. Not great. Population of about 2,000 people. The representatives of that entire culture, because that culture was, even though they were connected to the mainland, they were still distinct from the mainland, and a lot of the archaeological remnants of the Kaikutio, most of that is centered on Aruba and some on the other islands, more so than on mainland Venezuela. Amazingly, yet to its fortune, because the like most of the Caribbean is known for like lush jungles, rainforests, hurricanes, you know, like beautiful weather and then lots of rain. Because of like geography and whatever, the islands are very dry, arid. It doesn't rain that much. There's a rainy season, but like it's not like the soil is great for growing things. And because of that, the Spanish officially declared the islands useless. Like they had the designation of Isla Inutil. You know, it's because the soil wasn't great for cultivation, and for some weird reason, there weren't like a lot of laborers to go around. What this meant is that there was no like large-scale colonization for several centuries. There would be small amounts of Spanish settlers, some priestly classes. And mainland Kaikatio would move back to the islands, or not move back, but mainland Kaikatio would also have reasons to move to the islands and start settling down there. But that's not, you know, that's not the same people. They're called the same, but they're not the same people. The original people got annihilated, and eventually the island got repopulated by some parts Spanish, some parts mainland Kaikatio. They also brought with them new animals, such as donkeys and goats and that kind of stuff. Is this the instrumental? Yes, okay, that is it. Then, we fast forward to the 1620s. The Spanish Empire was kind of on the decline, while the Dutch Empire was on the rise as a global superpower. And through various machinations, the islands came under Dutch control. The Dutch also had other territories in South America. You know how it goes. So the islands came under Dutch control. So here we have the 3 islands, right? We have Aruba on the left, we have Curacao, the largest island, in the middle, and then Bonaire. So they all came under Dutch control, and Aruba and Bonaire basically became dependencies of Curacao. Curacao was the island that the Dutch were interested in. We'll get to it in a second. Why? It's not a great reason. You might be familiar with the Dutch East India Company, the world's first evil mega corporation, and their many, many, many crimes in and around Indonesia. Well, as their name would imply, you know, they're busy in the East. The Caribbean got its own spin-off with the West India Company? West Indies Company? No, West India Company, right? I don't know exactly what the translation is. The WIC. And though it was not nearly as successful an organization, perhaps thankfully, Curaçao's location and naturally deep harbor made it a hub for that cruel invention we call the transatlantic slave trade. And though, unlike on Curacao, no real plantation economy developed on Aruba, of course had some amount of slavery. But even then, under Dutch rule, it was mostly ignored for another couple of centuries. If you go to Aruba and then Curacao, the cultures are obviously related, but also very distinct. And one of the big distinctions is Curacao is much more of an Afro-Caribbean country because it had a whole lot of slave trade and plantations, and Aruba did not. Aruba is more of a Latin American Caribbean country, or at least more inspired by that. Which has led to some, conflict between the places. In any case, during these centuries, there was some horse breeding here, a little bit of farming there, and the island was... The pastoral lifestyle on the island was starting to develop a distinct culture all its own. It was briefly occupied by the British during the Napoleonic Wars, but then restored as Dutch territory not long after, still formally governed from Curacao. And from that point on, Aruba was essentially a colony, that's Curacao, there you go, a colony within a colony of what would eventually be called the Netherlands Antilles. But the world would soon learn that the Spanish declaration of Aruba being a useless island was not just wrong, but very wrong. Let's talk economic development. It is the late 19th, early 20th century. Alright? Multiple things would happen that would change the fate of the island forever. Okay? First, someone had a bright idea. All this dry soil, it might actually be great for a miracle plant that enjoys dry soil. Soil. We are talking about green gold. Aloe vera. The Aruba Aloe Company was founded in 1890 and is, to this day, still owned by the one same family, which, not entirely coincidentally, has also become quite a political dynasty. A descendant of the founder is currently Prime Minister. Though it represents only a small fraction of the island's economy, aloe-derived products such as overpriced soaps, overpriced creams, and overpriced lip balms are its main goods export. There is the Aruba Aloe factory and apparently the entirety of its farmland. How does such a small field fill up so many bottles of shampoo and whatever to be able to export them? You know, I'll let you use your imagination. Maybe not all of that Aruba aloe is Aruba aloe. So that's green gold, right? But there's also actual gold. There's this story. Look, this is a book about it that's kind of semi-historical. There is this story that a young goat herd was walking through a dry wash, because Aruba has no natural rivers, but when it rains, there are these arroyos, these dry creek beds that fill up. And he was just walking, herding his goats, and he saw something shining on the ground, and he found a golden nugget. And this is a story that gets repeated time and time again, almost certainly a fairy tale. But gold was discovered in the early 1800s, though it took quite a long time for it to develop on an industrial scale. This impressive structure these are the Bushiribana Gold Mill ruins, built in 1867. It's an impressive site, built with these massive black rocks. But in truth, it only operated for about a decade, taking in quartz from mine shafts in the area and crushing them so they could be processed. It is currently a very popular tourist destination. It's hard to get here. Like, if I go to Google Maps or Google Earth and I zoom in on it. Let's do that real quick. Alright, if you go zoom in on it, what you'll find, there you go, a bunch of cars and tour buses parked there. So, you know, it's kind of a cool site, but when you really look at it, it's just a few walls left standing in the middle of nowhere. I've always wanted, and I've never found in any of the historical references I've sought out, to find a picture of it. You know, it's from 1867, but to find a picture of it actually in working order, because I want to understand, like, where... Because all I see is just a bunch of walls, right? You might as well tell me that this was a castle or an old manor that burned down or something. I want to understand how it actually functioned, but that's not going to happen. There is a more impressive complex, the Balashi smelter complex. It actually has a picture of it in operating order. This was built in 1899, and it represents the height of gold exploitation on the island, which to this day, many of its buildings still standing, and it's part of the natural park system right now, so it's easily accessible. And yet, it too closed after only a couple of decades of operation. Because it turned out there just wasn't that much gold to be found, and it was hard to process, because I believe it's the kind of gold that's, like, embedded in big quartz crystals. So you had to get these big rocks with these veins running through them, and you had to crush them, and they had to undergo all these chemical process to get the little bits of gold out. So just a lot of work. And in the end, most of the profits would have to be handed over to the colonial authorities anyway. There was also mining of phosphates on the southern tip of the island. If we go back to the Google, we zoom out again, go all the way down here, right here, the southern tip here. There's some mine shafts. I've actually seen some of them. Like, you can drive by here. There's still, like, little shafts here leading down to caverns. And I think the phosphates came from... I don't quite understand how this works. Layers of fossilized bird guano. Right? So millions of years of bird shit that would accumulate with rocks. You got phosphates in there. Phosphates are great for fertilizer. So there was a little bit of excitement for mining this also in the late 19th century, but just like with the gold mining, by the start of World War I, there was little profit in it. But there is a third kind of gold that over the course of the 20th century would become very profitable indeed. Black gold. Oil, that is. This is Lake Maracaibo. Let's go back to Google Earth so you can get a better view. Here's Aruba. Here's Venezuela. This is Lake Maracaibo. Lake Maracaibo. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is known for exactly two things. One, for having the highest density of lightning strikes in the world. Like lightning storms that last half a year. Like the entire night sky lit up by continuous lightning. It's kind of fucked up. This seems to be something in the air up there. And two, under that lake, massive oil reserves. Like the kinds of oil reserves that would make a nominally socialist country become the target of American aggression. Right? The problem, we could call it problem, is that Lake Maracaibo is a shallow lake, meaning all the oil-carrying ships that could suck up all that oil aren't meant for the open ocean, right? So, Aruba is in the perfect place to take that raw crude oil, that black gold, and transfer it to seagoing ships, and maybe doing a little refining while they're at it. Are there any conspiracies why there are so many lightning strikes? I think so. I think if you'll ask people about HARP and weather manipulation and whatever, there'll probably be a couple of kooks. But I think most conspiracy theories don't know about it so much. They don't have that much to say about it. But it is a very fascinating meteorological phenomenon. Anyway, the oil, the refining was a revolution for the island. And two major refineries popped up. This is Arendt or Eagle Refinery, which was operated by Shell. You remember Shell, the evil company Shell? This is theirs. And this is Lago, named after the Spanish word for lake, which was run by Standard Oil of New Jersey. And as you can imagine, the construction of these refineries resulted in an incredible economic and population boom, the big industrial revolution for Aruba. It also resulted in attacks by the Nazis. So this Maracaibo oil became incredibly important when the United States entered World War II, with about 15%. Do I have the book? I have a book with the number, but it says about 15% of the Allied Navy's fuel coming just from the Lago refinery, which at that point was one of, if not the largest oil refineries in the world. So quite a bump from useless islands to providing like a decision-making amount of fuel to the Allied war effort. Let me. Here is a torpedo launched at the Eagle Refinery that landed on the beach. I don't know if it's these two guys, but people tried defusing this torpedo, and it did in fact explode, killing the technicians working on it. Although it did no damage to the actual refinery itself. Because why would you launch a torpedo? I don't think the torpedo was launched at the refinery. The torpedo was probably launched at a ship that was parked there. And Lago, very famously, got attacked by a Nazi sub. I think it's the exact same submarine. Here is Lago, or what remains of it now. And all over this area, there were bunkers and cannon batteries and whatever. At some point, I think this is like 1943 something, a sub surfaced here, and the sub had like a cannon on the, you know, if you've seen Indiana Jones or whatever, the U-boat had like a cannon on the top deck. So in submarines, it turns out those cannons have big plugs in them so that when they go underwater, the water doesn't go into the barrel. Nazis, being, you know, notorious idiots, they forgot to take out the plug. So as they started to try shooting at the refinery, the gun just exploded like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Hilarious. So clearly, obviously, this was easily the most important Aruba would ever be or have been. This was I had phrased it perfectly already. I don't know why when I'm reading this I need to change it. You know, when you're doing a presentation and you're like, I need to change the wording up a little bit from how I wrote it. Even though how I wrote it is perfect, because how I wrote it is, this was the most important Aruba had ever been. The Eagle refinery would be dismantled about a decade after the war, but Lago trundled along, being the center of the island's economy for decades, slowly declining until its closure in 1985. To give a hint to like how important this was. Ben. Big, very comprehensive book all about the history of the refinery. That's the same picture, isn't it? Is that the same picture? Wait, let's look at the boats. The boat placement. Yeah, that's the exact same picture. Hi, Stanny. Thank you.
Stanny has donated your 25.00 to the Bob stream.
So the Lago refinery over the course of the 20th century had a humongous influence on the island's culture. It also brought in a lot of the majority of Aruba's black population comes from laborers who arrived to work at Lago. I'm at 55. What was the other donation? I need to count. I need to keep track. I'm really happy about it too. Loopy. Critical mammal. Pintozilla. 20 plus 25 is 45. Which means we're now at 550. 50 more euros to get the stream to 12 hours. We're only 4 hours in. That's a lot of hours. So yeah, the Lago was hugely important, right? So when it closed in 1985, not a good thing, economic. But you can't keep a good island down. The refinery closing coincided with a massive political victory that had been waged for decades. See, Aruba... Hi, Shafiq! Thank you, Shafiq.
Gratitude. Shafiq Leela has donated your 25.00 to the Bob stream. Bobathon time.
Bobathon time! 25 euros left for 12-hour stream. I hope you're doing well, Shafiq. So, Aruba, politically, was, since 1954 at least, the political structure of the Kingdom of the Netherlands was as such. Indonesia had gained its independence entirely, right? Suriname and the islands in the Caribbean were part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands at the same level as the country of the Netherlands. So the way it works is you have the kingdom as a whole. You have the Netherlands, the main country. Hey, Frowny Biscuit!
Gratitude. Frowny Biscuit has donated
you're already here.
5.00 to the Bob stream. Long live Alien Bob.
So we are going for 12 hours. How about that? We are officially going for 12 hours. Thank you all so much. I need to take a little pause here and go like... That's crazy. And also, Mrs. Bob is officially going to join us in a few minutes whenever I finish this thing. And we're going to play some Mario Kart and some Turtles in Time. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good, fun time. Mrs. Bob has been on the stream a couple of times before. Not a full review. Okay. Back to this fascinating political situation of Aruba. It's important, okay? It's very important to the island's identity. Aruba was not a country on its own, even compared to, within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Aruba was a part of the country that was the Netherlands Antilles, which encompassed 6 islands. Encompassed Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, St. Martin, the Dutch side, Saba, and St. Eustatius. Okay? Since even before 1954, when that was like codified in the Dutch Constitution, Aruba was like, that doesn't seem right to us. We're really cool. Okay. And what this meant was Aruba was governed from Curacao. Right? So Aruba was a colony within a colony. And they didn't like that. They didn't like that one bit. They wanted to be separate. They call it status aparte, separate state. And for decades, people worked on basically forcing Curacao, forcing the Netherlands to accept this status. And in 1985, or technically January 1st, 1986, this was won. Which basically meant Aruba existed as a nation separately within the kingdom at the same level as the rest of the Netherlands Antilles. All right, that's as close as they got to independence. There was the idea was, I think, look, as you're gonna hear from the rest of this, Arubans are crafty. The idea was the Netherlands went along with this because the thing was, okay, we're gonna give you this, and then 10 years later you're gonna go full independent. Basically, we're gonna get rid of it. And Aruba was like, sure. Yeah. 10 years later, no, they were still part of the Netherlands because it's way too advantageous to still be part of a major European power. Right. Later on, in 2010, Curacao and St. Martin, like the whole Antilles system got shooken up again. Curacao and St. Martin would achieve the same status, and the other 3 islands would become special municipalities within the Netherlands. But the point is, 1985, the closure of the refinery was a huge economic blow. But the win of status aparte was a representation of the tenacious entrepreneurial spirit that the Aruban people have. That even when I didn't want to be there because I was a stupid kid, I had to admire. Because since the 1960s, a new resource had been identified. You already know what this is, but I'm gonna go through my little poem, my little spiel anyway. Something more valuable than green, black, or gold. The fat American tourist wallet. Right? Over these decades, the island had been building a reputation as a mostly rain-free tropical paradise safely located just outside of the hurricane belt. And the refinery closing, in one way, was a boon? Is that the right word? A good thing. Because it only accelerated the popping up of many more resorts, from the cheap to the positively luxurious. And the conversion of its natural beauty and historical sites into valuable tourist attractions. And now, in some ways, after what seems like an hour, we have finally made it to the actual tour of some of Aruba's most prime locations. First, let me open Google Earth again because I want to do this kind of interactively. Okay. First, this is Eagle Beach, right? This area right now, full of resorts and a golf course and pools. This is where the Eagle Refinery used to be. The beach is named after the refinery. Eagle Beach is now regularly voted as one of the top beaches in the world. And as someone who would go there many times a year, you know, not that I've gone to many other beaches in the world, but yeah, it's basically a perfect beach because you could just park your car there, and then there's white sand, and then there's beautiful turquoise water, and there's nothing more to it. The sun sets right there. It is the most gorgeous, picturesque fucking thing you can ever imagine. All right. Another one of my favorite sites, with humongous meaning to the island, is the Hooiberg, this hill right in the middle. If we take a look at like the topology of the island, you'll see it's mostly flat here. Then there's some hills here and a majorly hilly area here. But right in the middle of the island is this perfect little round hill. This perfect little round hill. You can see it from almost anywhere anywhere on the island. And it's visible. It's visible from almost everywhere on the island. And hey, who's that? 600 grueling steps to the top. It gets quite steep there near the top. Worth it for incredible vistas. And of course, who can forget the island's former natural wonder, located right here. What was once, a long time ago now, almost 20 years. No, more than 20 years. The Natural Bridge. This is what it looked like before 2005. It was... Hi, Pentozilla. Thank you, Pentozilla. It was like this image of this big natural bridge right over the water was like the single major like tourist attraction picture. You know, this is the postcard picture. 2005, September 2005, I believe. Like a month after I left. Collapsed. This is what it looks like now. But even now, its majesty still echoes. It's collapsed. People still come here. They still come to look at it. And it's like there's a sister natural bridge right next to it. That's not quite as impressive, but still really. But it's a continuous daily reminder that the forces of nature are still carving the shape of the island to this day. But also, this one may have fallen. There are more wonders out there on the island. This is a place called... Oof, I have a hard time pronouncing this because I never was able to roll my R's properly, okay? Wariruri. That's what that's called. Another beautiful natural bridge, a little out of the way. There's also non-natural wonders. If we go a little bit to the west, where is it? Here it is. Located here, right off the coast, also with beautiful views of the ocean, which in Google Earth apparently is not flat. Sorry, I'm supposed to do this. Alright, you will find the Chapel of Alto Vista. It is built on the site of the island's first church. It's a reconstruction from like... I think it was built in the 1950s, but it's on the site of where the island's first church came in. Now, the island is predominantly Catholic. Of course, it's a good reminder that it's predominantly Catholic because of the forced conversions by the Spanish conquerors in the 1500s. And yet, you know, it's a very serene place where you can commune with the spirit of the island, which ironically has been so long drowned out by the grating voice of the Christ. There's also, if we now head on over to a more populated place, There's also the city center of Oranjestad. Oranjestad, named after the Dutch royalty House of Orange. This is the capital, but you know, it's hard to call it the capital. It's basically one. The city is the island is like one, maybe two cities. You know, it's one big urban area. But this is the historic capital. This is kind of where it all started. There is an old fort here. Is this it? Yeah, that's like one of the oldest buildings in the island, on the island rather, and it has many historic, you know, beautiful kind of colonial buildings that are currently in the process of being restored, and have a lot of history to them, and also the archaeological museum, which, of course, itself is full of precious artifacts. That's where some of those Kaikatio pottery pictures were taken from by me, myself. And the museum is also on its own a precious artifact because it's built, that this facade is the former family residence of an Aruban World War II resistance fighter by the name of Boy Curie. They were like a prominent family. He was studying in the Netherlands when World War II popped off, and he got, he worked for the resistance, basically killing Nazis, but a traitor, snitched on their group, and he and his friends were executed not long after. Also not great. However, how about the California Lighthouse? The California Lighthouse. Now we zoom out again. We zoom out. We go all the way to the western tip. Really a tip. And on that tip, we find... Not that. That's a weather station. Here it is. That's the lighthouse. Overlooking, the northwestern part of Aruba section of the Caribbean Sea. You can climb up it for a price. I think they asked for $5 or something like that. The California Lighthouse is not named after the U.S. state, but named after a ship called the RMS, a British steamliner, I think it was, called the California, that sank off the coast in 1899, thus making people go, hey, maybe we should build a lighthouse here. There is another historic city center. Two historic city centers. If we go back to the map, and now we zoom in over here. Now here you can see all these big tanks. This is the remnants of the refinery. And around that is what was the company town of San Nicolas. San Nicolas, bit of a bit economically neglected, especially after the closure of the refinery. Not entirely coincidentally, that's where the majority of the black population lives. Colorism is a problem everywhere. But it's currently undergoing quite a resurgence, and since, I don't know when, I think this was post-COVID, so 5 years ago or so, they started commissioning artists, both international and local, to paint all these beautiful murals, and some of them are truly spectacular. And it really has helped build up the kind of the image of the city. And also, you know what they have there? Some damn good food. Let me tell you what. And then lastly, for our tour today, because I'm already over time technically, if you go here to the north coast, to some of these terraced areas, some of these areas are littered with caves. We saw some paintings already, some cave paintings. The caves of Guadiriquiri, was also a hard one to pronounce, have these beautiful light shafts in them. And also the cave of Fontaine, which is near one of the few freshwater springs on the island, is just full of these beautiful, beautiful paintings that... These symbols are unique in the world, and they're 1,000 years old, and they represent a people that disappeared. They represent a people that I cannot be related to, because they were genocided. And yet, I am related to them in the sense that I am part of what continues on their legacy, even with this little slide. Here's a funny little story. Here's a funny little anecdote. Completely spontaneous, not something I wrote down and planned at all. When I was a little kiddo, when I was a little boblet, 16, 17, I worked. Wait, let's go to the map. I worked here. I worked right here. So this is a big outdoor mall, and then here is a big resort and indoor mall called the Renaissance something mall, and this is the marketplace, whatever. What languages are usually spoken in Aruba? Most Arubans are at least trilingual, but I would say it is a mix of Dutch, obviously, that's technically the official language and also the language in education. English, because of American influence. So much of the TV is in English, and all the tourism. If you want to get tips, you gotta know some English. Spanish, because of proximity to South America, and there's a lot of cultural interchange between Aruba and Venezuela and Colombia. Like, I have heritage in Colombia myself. And the local language, Papiamento, which is a Spanish, Dutch, Portuguese, West African Creole. Basically, the slave trade brought some of this Creole to Curacao, which then spread to the neighboring islands and started developing into its own language, which we call Papiamento. That's the languages I've spoken. Back to my story. Thanks, Lee Tigran.
Gratitude.
Lee Tregan.
The underscore Trigan has donated you 20.00 to the Bob stream.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I don't even know where I am now. 62%. When I was little, I had a little job here, right in this building. So this building is a resort. See, there's the pool. And a mall. At that point, just a regular mall. Now, since then, it's only become like a luxury stuff. And there was also a casino and a theater for shows. Right, that theater would put on variety shows with dancing, whatever. But what I worked for is a panoramic, like a 20-minute panoramic tour of the island. Kind of what I'm doing now, but with a lot more budget. Because this is where the cruise ships would come. And obviously people who hop off of cruise ships, they have half a day to do a tour of the island. Maybe they want 20 minutes to spend looking at a movie about what they could do. I could talk about Aruba dishes right after this. I have a cookbook. We talk about this. On Saturdays, I would run that show. I would run that panoramic movie. I would help set up the screens in the morning, and then during the day, every hour there would be a showing, and I would sell the tickets. For lunch, I would walk down here.
You're welcome, comrade worker.
That was me.
You want some vodka?
Except for the vodka. For lunch, I would walk here, because here, right here, I think this part of the building was a Wendy's. Wendy's. The Netherlands doesn't have Wendy's. I would walk here, and then I'd have lunch.
Everything is so beautiful.
Also, I would have lunch either here or here by the water, and I'd feed iguanas and pelicans my little fries. And then I'd walk back by the boats, and then I'd go sit in the office and be bored. So this place here, right here, this little patch of grass, right now there's a stage there. Back in the day, there wasn't a stage there. Back when I was there, it was the enclosure of Tessa, the Siberian tiger. The very same tiger that appeared in a bunch of Esso commercials in the 90s. Remember that theater I talked about where I would have my panoramic movies? That theater was also used for variety shows. one of those variety shows included the tiger. And at some point that show ended and she needed a place to live, so they built like an enclosure there. Just this round little plexiglass area with some rocks and some pools and some shades. What a strange thing for 17-year-old me to experience. Not a great place for a tiger to be, I think. Even a zoo would have been better. Not a fan that... Oh, I thought I had pictures of that. I don't. You could, tourists could pay a fee to take pictures with her and her handler. I think at some point she left. She died later on of old age somewhere in Oklahoma or something like that. I can't speak to how well she was treated there. But yeah, the owner, her owner still lived there. It was her handler and whatever. It wasn't like she just got dumped and we didn't know what to do with her. But what I think is it highlights the dichotomy of being a tourism-centered economy, right? Over-tourism is bad for the environment. It's bad for local culture. It's bad for, like, Siberian tigers. And yet, Aruba, to my great benefit, enjoys one of, if not the highest standard of living in the Caribbean, and I'd be willing to say much of South and Central America as well. And it's tourism is the resource that helps it get there to that point. Thankfully, there are growing voices and forces that help keep things in balance. This is the Arikok National Park. It encompasses like 30% of the island. We can go to Google Earth again for that. It's like this entire area, at least. A lot of natural spaces. The national park, it was relatively new when I was a kid. Aruba's number 2 export after tourism. Financial crime, maybe? I don't know. Earlier we talked about aloe. Aloe is technically the number 1 export in terms of products, but it's not a significant part of it's like a single-digit percentage. I think there's tax haven stuff. There's money laundering stuff. There's always been a drug problem stuff, because it's like easy access to mainland Europe. But this national park has grown out to become a full-on conservation organization that is now in charge of protecting very large parts of the island, including marine conservation parks, and helps protect its unique wildlife and flora. That feisty entrepreneurial spirit also applies to keeping its nature and culture in balance, and especially with its nature, there are unique species. There are unique species of owls, of rattlesnakes. Yes, they are dangerous, but also they're very cool and important. And so, like, I snorkeled here last year, and it was an incredible experience. And the reefs have suffered under industry, but are, like, I watched this beautiful documentary. I forget what it's called. I might link to it. Aruba Reef documentary. Wonderfully produced. Quite high budget. It's called Turning the Tide. Let me get a link here. Post this link. Put it in your watch later. A feature-length documentary about what they're doing right now to protect the coral reefs and to revitalize them and whatnot. Because there's like fish and there's a submarine. There's a submarine. Okay. I don't know if it's still running. Is it still running? Atlantis submarine. Aruba. There's glass bottom boats, tours, and whatever. There is a submarine you can take to go down into the coral reefs and look at parrotfish and shit, and it's, this is the kind of shit we need more of in the world. Not the submarine, but the protection and stuff. As far as I know, the submarine is cool. It's not, like, damaging. But pretty crazy. I did it once. It wasn't too bad. It doesn't go very deep, Hey, Grace! You're right on time for the very end of the Aruba tour. Happy to see you. We made it past 600, so in a few minutes, Mrs. Bob will show up and we're gonna have a good time. As for the refinery, there it is. I made this before I hit. This is the refinery. Right here you can see how large it was at some point. It extended all the way to over here. All this soil is disgusting. All these tanks are empty, no longer used. There's all these jetties and all this shit. It goes on to like here. The refinery has, since 1985... Oops, this is just my script. Since 1985, it has been turned on and off again a bunch of times. It's been bought up by certain companies, by Coastal, by Valero. I don't know who the fuck owned it now. You know, they would still try to use it a little bit. It would never, ever got back to its former glory. I think right now, or since last year, all it was used for was just for receiving the oil used for the island itself, or not the oil, the gasoline and whatever. But even that, I think, is no longer being used because it is now mostly rusted piles of trash and chemical-soaked soil. And as of 2025, that's last year, the official decision has been made to dismantle it and remediate the soil so that the land can probably be used to build more hotels. But at the very least, that's more hotels that will not be built on top of animal habitats, because most of the hotels are here along the pristine beaches. You can see this hotel. These are all low-rise hotels. There's a lot of them. Then there's this. This is a wildlife refuge. This is like a... What's it called? What would you call it? Ubali. What's his name? Ubali. Bird sanctuary. That's what it is. Bird sanctuary, and then they built fucking hotels right here. This is after my time. I'm just like disgusting. But then here's all the high-rise hotels. You see so many resorts, but they're running out of space because you can't really build here, and here there's houses. So what did they start doing? They built this is built already. This is an old picture. They built one here too, which is a ridiculous place for a hotel. I think if they can spend a couple of $1 billion to clean up all of this land, you know, that is just now rusting away anyway and is not in any way kind of meaningful for wildlife or nature, hey, that's some prime spot for hotels. Could maybe be a good economic boom for this area also. And that's it. That's it. That's the end. That's the end of my little tour of Aruba that you all paid 600 euros for. No, 500 euros. 600 is for the 12 hours. And you all paid 500 euros for. Thank you so much. That was my little overview of its history, some of its places, some of its people. It's a small place, and yet it's a big place, especially now that I'm trying to make a scaled down version of it for my game. Even just trying to design that is very tricky, because like 30 kilometers when you're driving is not so much. 30 kilometers when you're building that out, all of a sudden becomes a thing. Sally knows what's up. Sally lived on Aruba too. I hope, yeah, you learned something. I'm glad you did. Thank you. Any questions? Now's question time. I wrote most of this yesterday afternoon. I outlined it before. Also about that food. Okay. So you know, there's a big mix of stuff. Least favorite place on Aruba, school. Here. Here's the airport. Here's the stadium. This is my high school. My favorite animal from Aruba. Okay. The Venezuelan Trupial. This beautiful yellow-orange bird has a beautiful song, too. Yeah. So food is complicated because Aruba is, of course, a oh wait, I need to change something. I need to change the ticker because we're aiming for 700 euros for a bad game roulette number 2. I believe we made it this far. That's great. So food is confusing because where the iguanas usually chill, very chill. You don't get close to them, and some people do hunt them. You ever talking food? Some people make soup out of them, but they're considered like protected species. You're not supposed to. Food is confusing because Aruba is, of course, an island, a port island. It has influences from a lot of places. There is food that is considered to come from the original Kaikatio. I don't know. Let me see if this book, by the way, we got. Well, we didn't get it from Sally from Humperdinck, but like she pointed us to it, and she makes amazing Aruban food. I had amazing Aruban food in Switzerland earlier this year. It's crazy that I can go to Switzerland and get amazing, delicious Aruban food. So. There's a lot of food. It's mixed with food from Curacao, Bonaire, Jamaica, Venezuela, Colombia. If you're familiar with Johnny Cakes are a pretty delicious snack. You can get any snack bar. The pastéchi, the humble pastéchi. It's a pasty, right? It's sweet, not very sweet. It's somewhat sweet. Usually filled with cheese or ham and cheese. Fried, it's just dough and cheese, and it is what heaven is made of. Okay, I don't know how easy it would be to make. If you look up pastéchi, look, it's written like that, Pasteci. If you look up pastéchi recipe, it's not very difficult. They're easy to make. Heaven. When I go back to Aruba, I'm gonna go back for my birthday in December, hopefully. I'm gonna eat several dozen of these. There is also, influence from like Dutch cuisine, and Indonesian cuisine through Dutch colonial stuff. There is a variant of the pastéchi. I don't know if it's in the book. Do you know if it's in the book, Sally? The Dedito? It's hard to tell. Dedito. That's a I think it's technically Venezuelan or oh yeah, there it is. Page 18. It was before that. The Dedito, it's a similar thing. It's just rounded. It's just dough wrapped around like a stick of Gouda cheese. Also incredible. I think it's Venezuelan, technically. My grandma used to make them in the bulk. They're fantastic. So the traditional kind of Indian, so as in Kaikatio, native food, is two things. One is called pan bati, which basically means beaten bread. It's a kind of sweet flatbread. Goes really well with grandma's chicken soup. My grandma would make that chicken soup. It would be amazing. This book is a little dirty. And there's also a kind of corn pudding. Is it a pudding? It's a warm kind of corn type pudding called funchi. Funchi. Just this yellow kind of rough globule. Firm polenta. There you go. Very good. Not on its own, but you know, with fish or something, incredible. Fish soup, chicken soup with fat potatoes in it. You know, I don't know what else in here because this book is for the entire, you know, Antilles, so it includes recipes. It's written by someone from Curacao, or at least with Curaçaoan heritage. I don't know what else, but like the thing is, you're gonna get a lot of if you go there and eat it at a restaurant, you're gonna get a lot of good, tasty meat. You know, Jamaican jerk chicken and shit. Very tasty rice, very tasty fish, that kind of stuff. Fresh fish, picked right out of the sea. Pretty incredible. My mom and her husband are part of a boating club, I guess, because they have a boat. They have a small sailing boat. They went to the Bahamas with it once, and they go there to eat all the time. And the fish that you get there is literally just some guy went and fished it out. Incredible. What was the straightforward moving to the Netherlands coming from Aruba? So Sally knows this too, because Sally, we became friends during that process. How it works is, if you're an Aruban, if you have Aruban citizenship, you have a Dutch passport. Because the passport is of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So there's no such thing as an Aruban citizenship. There's, issues with like residency and whatever, but you have a Dutch passport. My parents were born there. They came to the Netherlands to study. They had me and my siblings, and then we moved back when I was 7. If you go to high school, if you go to like any kind of high school that is not technical school, what in the Netherlands would be HAVO or VWO, which gives you entry to college and universities. Well, even elementary school. You're taught in Dutch, but high school specifically, you're taught in the Dutch system, the Dutch high school system, with some local modifications. So your diploma gains you entry into Dutch universities. And at least when I was there, I think it's changed a little bit now, but there was just one high school on the island that would do that. That would be like the main advanced high school of the island. I wouldn't call it advanced, really. And so basically, when you graduate, they would organize the whole thing. They chartered a plane. They have mentors situated in many of the major Dutch university cities that help guide you. Everyone came on the same plane, and then you're split out to your cities, and you spent a couple of days in a hotel. You get your housing sorted. They help you set up bank accounts. You gotta go check in. You get a loan from the Aruban government also to help you out. A little bit of extra cash. So that's all. What I have noticed, what I find interesting is when I moved to the Netherlands, when I moved to Aruba, I was 7. I didn't want to move. Still paying that loan. I'm not, but don't tell anyone. When I moved to the Netherlands, I was 7. I didn't want to move. I had friends. I was happy where I lived, and all of a sudden I was ripped from where I was and moved to a country I didn't know anything about, and I had a lot of trouble adjusting. What am I talking about? Why am I saying this? I was very much looking forward to moving back, but also I missed home. The Netherlands was home for me. I missed it. So whenever there was something that reminded me of the Netherlands, I was like, hey. What I find interesting now is, now, much, much, much later, now when I go back, the Dutch influence has actually grown quite a bit. What's interesting is the Dutch, as tourists, and still kind of as a colonizing force, are much more interested in Curacao. And Aruba caters much more to the American. But recently, like, if you go to a lot of the big supermarkets there now, full of Dutch products. Full of, like, the same products I see in the supermarket right now. I find that fascinating. If that was there when I was a kid, it would have made my transition a lot easier.